The morning sun crept over the Sonoran Desert, painting the small town of Cibola, Arizona in shades of amber and gold. Sheriff Jim Hawkins stood on the weathered porch of his modest ranch house, coffee mug in hand, surveying the landscape that had become his sanctuary after 15 years of war. The jagged mountains in the distance reminded him of Afghanistan's Hindu Kush, but here there were no hidden Taliban fighters, no IEDs buried in the dirt roads, just the peaceful whisper of desert wine through mesquite trees. At 42, Hawkins carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had seen humanity at its worst and survived. His steel-gray eyes, sharp as a raptor's, missed nothing, a habit that saved lives in Helmand Province, and now served him well as sheriff of Yuma County. The Marines had taken a linebacker from small-town Texas and forged him into a Force Recon commander, teaching him to read terrain like a book and men's intentions like newspaper headlines. He'd come to Cibola seeking peace, running from memories of fallen brothers and battles that played on endless loop in his dreams. The townspeople, all 8,000 of them, had elected him sheriff not because he campaigned, he hadn't, but because they recognized something in his bearing that spoke of protection, of safety. What they didn't know was that Hawkins had quietly built something extraordinary beneath the surface of their sleepy desert town. The Cibola County Sheriff's Department occupied a single-story adobe building on Main Street, its faded paint and creaking wooden signs suggesting nothing more threatening than parking tickets and occasional bar fights. But in the basement, behind a door marked storage, lay an armory that would make most military units envious. M4 carbines lined the walls, alongside tactical vests, night vision goggles, and communications equipment that could coordinate a battalion-level operation. All acquired through legal channels, all maintained with military precision. Hawkins had recruited his team with the careful deliberation of a chess master positioning pieces for an endgame only he could see. Each deputy brought not just law enforcement skills, but combat experience that transformed them from small-town cops into an elite tactical unit. Deputy Marcus, Ghost, Riley arrived at the station first that morning, as he did every day. At 38, the former Delta Force operator moved with an economy of motion that made him seem to materialize rather than walk. His call sign came from Kosovo, where he'd eliminated a war criminal from 1,400 meters, a shot so impossible the locals attributed it to supernatural forces. The scar running down his left forearm, a souvenir from Mogadishu, served as a reminder that even ghosts could bleed. Ghost's sniper rifle, a custom M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, rested in a locked case in his patrol vehicle. He maintained it with the devotion of a monk tending sacred relics, knowing that in their line of work, precision meant the difference between hostages saved and body bags filled. His dark eyes constantly scanned rooftops and windows, a habit that made him seem paranoid to civilians but had saved Hawkins' life twice in Iraq. "Morning, Sheriff," Ghost said, his voice barely above a whisper, another habit from years of operating in hostile territory. "DA bulletin came in. Los Aztecas are getting bold." Hawkins nodded, accepting the encrypted tablet. The cartels had been pushing north, testing boundaries, probing for weakness. They'd find none here. Deputy Sarah, Valkyrie, Valdez pulled into the parking lot, her K9 partner Zeus already alert in the back of her SUV. At 35, she was the first woman from Cibola to graduate from Ranger School, a feat that had made national news. But the media didn't know about her 3 tours in Afghanistan, or the Silver Star she'd earned for holding a combat outpost against 200 Taliban fighters with just her squad. Valkyrie's call sign came from her uncanny ability to choose who lived and died in combat, like the Norse warrior spirits of legend. Her raven black hair, usually worn in a tight bun, framed a face that could shift from maternal warmth to predatory focus in a heartbeat. Zeus, a Belgian Malinois. Ned, in both narcotics detection and tactical operations, responded to commands in Dutch, a safeguard against cartel members who might know English or Spanish commands. Zeus is restless this morning, she reported, checking her sidearm, a Glock 19 with tritium night sights. He keeps alerting toward the South Highway. The last member of their core team, Deputy Tom Thunder Thompson, arrived precisely at 0700, his prosthetic left ear hidden beneath his Stetson. The former Navy SEAL explosives expert had lost his hearing to an IED in Ramadi but refused to let it end his service. At 45, he was the oldest of the group, his weathered face telling stories his lips never would. Thunder's expertise lay in making things go boom, or preventing them from doing so. He'd disabled more IEDs than he could count and could construct an explosive device from household chemicals that would level a building. His patrol vehicle carried enough det cord and C4 to bring down a bridge, all legally documented for emergency demolition operations. Perimeter sensors picked up movement last night, Thunder reported, his voice carrying the slight distortion common to those with hearing implants. 3 vehicles, Mexican plates, circling the station between 0200 and 0400. Hawkins processed this information, his tactical mind already wargaming scenarios. The Los Aztecas cartel had been expanding operations, pushing into Arizona with increasing boldness. Their new enforcement arm, led by a former Mexican Special Forces officer known as El Escorpión, had left a trail of bodies from Sonora to Phoenix. Staff meeting in 5. Hawkins ordered. Full brief. The team gathered in the secure conference room, its walls lined with maps, intelligence reports, and photographs of known cartel members. What appeared to be a routine law enforcement briefing would have been recognized by any special operations veteran as a pre-mission planning session. Gentlemen, lady, Hawkins began, his Texas drawl barely noticeable after years of military service. We've got indicators of cartel surveillance. Pattern suggests reconnaissance for something bigger. He pulled up satellite imagery on the wall screen, showing known cartel routes through the desert. 3 weeks ago, we intercepted that shipment, 200 kilos of cocaine. Street value north of 6 million. That wasn't some mule getting lost. That was a probe. Ghost studied the imagery with sniper's eyes, testing response times. They wanted to see what we'd bring to the party. Exactly, Hawkins confirmed. And what they saw was a by-the-book felony stop. No indication of our true capabilities. Valkyrie leaned forward, Zeus lying alert at her feet. The question is, when do they make their move? Thunder was already calculating blast radius patterns in his head. If I were them, I'd hit the evidence room. Destroy the drugs, send a message. Maybe grab a hostage or 2 for leverage. Hawkins nodded. Which is why we're shifting to condition yellow. Modified schedules, overlapping coverage. I want someone with tactical capability in or near this building 24/7. The team understood without further explanation. In their world, condition yellow meant weapons within reach, escape routes memorized, backup plans for backup plans. It was the state they'd lived in overseas, where the difference between life and death was measured in split seconds and proper preparation. Outside, Cibola continued its peaceful morning routine. Ranchers drove pickup trucks down Main Street, stopping to chat about cattle prices and weather forecasts. The Desert Rose Cafe filled with the breakfast crowd, conversations flowing over coffee and huevos rancheros. Children walked to school, backpacks bouncing, unaware that their crossing guard was a former Special Forces medic who could perform emergency surgery with a Leatherman tool. The town harbored 47 military veterans, an unusually high number for its size. They'd been drawn by something indefinable, perhaps Hawkins' quiet leadership, perhaps the desert's familiar emptiness, perhaps the unspoken promise that here, among others who understood, they could find peace while remaining prepared. These veterans formed an invisible network throughout the community. The high school principal had commanded an infantry company in Fallujah. The owner of the hardware store had been a Marine Scout sniper. The librarian, a sweet grandmother who organized children's reading hours, had served as an intelligence analyst tracking terrorist financing networks. None advertised their service. There were no veteran-owned signs, no war stories shared at the bar. But they knew each other, recognized the subtle signs, the way someone checked corners when entering a room, the unconscious tactical spacing when walking in groups, the flash of recognition when distant thunder sounded too much like artillery. Once a month, they gathered at the dusty spur gun range, owned by Gunnery Sergeant Miguel Ortiz, USMC, Ret. Ostensibly a civilian shooting club, these sessions were actually tactical training evolutions. They practiced room clearing, conducted stress shoots, and maintained their edge without alarming the civilian population. Hawkins had recruited his SWAT team from this pool of talent, selecting not just for skill but for temperament. Each member had proven they could flip the switch, from peaceful citizen to lethal warrior and back again, without losing their humanity in the transition. The sheriff's office itself reflected this duality. To the public areas, it was all small-town charm, wanted posters featuring cattle rustlers, a community bulletin board advertising bake sales, deputy teaching bicycle safety to elementary students. But behind secured doors, the tactical operations center rivaled those of major metropolitan departments. Banks of monitors displayed feeds from hidden cameras covering every approach to the building. Encrypted radios linked to repeaters throughout the county ensured communications couldn't be intercepted. The armory contained not just weapons but specialized equipment, breaching tools, tactical shields, enough ammunition to sustain a prolonged engagement. Hawkins had established protocols that would seem paranoid to outsiders but were second nature to his team. Every deputy memorized multiple evacuation routes. Weapons were cached in strategic locations throughout town. Response plans existed for scenarios ranging from hostage situations to coordinated attacks. The morning briefing continued, but Hawkins' instincts screamed that something was coming. In Afghanistan, he'd learned to trust that sixth sense, the primitive awareness that kept humans alive when reason failed. The cartels were predators, and predators didn't conduct surveillance unless they planned to strike. "I want everyone to review the breach protocols," he ordered. "Ghost, update your range cards for all Overwatch positions. Valkyrie, have Zeus do extra patrols around the perimeter. Thunder, check all our cached equipment." His team nodded, no questions asked. They'd follow him into hell itself, knowing he'd have a plan to get them out. As the meeting concluded, Hawkins looked out the window at his town, his people. They'd come here for peace, all of them. But peace, he'd learned, was not the absence of conflict. It was the presence of justice, backed by the willingness to fight for it. The Los Aztecas thought they were planning an attack on a small-town sheriff's office. They had no idea they were walking into a kill zone defended by some of America's most lethal warriors. When the storm came, and Hawkins knew it would, they would be ready. In the basement, the weapons waited. On the streets, his deputies patrolled with practiced vigilance. And in the shadows, the veterans of Cibola stood watch, guardian angels with dirty faces and clean consciences, prepared to teach the cartels a lesson they would not survive to forget. The desert sun climbed higher, its heat beginning to shimmer off the asphalt. Somewhere to the south, Escorpión was planning his assault, confident in his numerical superiority and cartel backing. He would learn, as so many enemies had before, that there were worse fates than death. There was facing American warriors who had come home to protect their own. Hawkins finished his coffee and checked his sidearm. Just another day in paradise, he thought, allowing himself a grim smile. The kind of paradise worth fighting for, worth dying for if necessary. But today wouldn't be that day. Today, the devils would learn that some small towns had bigger teeth than they showed. The war had followed him home, but this time, he was ready for it. They all were. And may God have mercy on their enemies, because the Cibola County SWAT team would not. 3 weeks before the storm broke, Deputy Chen pulled over a black Escalade with Sonora plates on Highway 85, just past mile marker 17. The vehicle had been weaving slightly, nothing dramatic, but Chen's instincts, honed by 2 tours as an MP in Afghanistan, told him to look closer. What he found would set in motion a chain of events that would transform Cibola from a sleepy desert town into a battleground. The driver, a nervous man in his 30s with prison tattoos crawling up his neck, fumbled for his license. The passenger remained perfectly still, eyes fixed straight ahead, too still, too controlled. Chen's hand rested on his sidearm as he noted the rosary hanging from the rearview mirror, the air freshener failing to mask another scent entirely. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Chen ordered, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. What followed was textbook procedure, but the results were anything but routine. Hidden beneath false panels in the SUV's cargo area were 200 kilos of pure Colombian cocaine, wrapped in plastic and marked with the distinctive scorpion symbol of Los Aztecas Cartel. The driver broke immediately, sweat beading on his forehead as he stammered in rapid Spanish. "You don't understand, officer. You don't know who you're messing with. These people, they don't forgive. They don't forget." Chen cuffed him without ceremony. "Save it for the judge." But it was the passenger who concerned him more. The man had said nothing during the entire stop, his silence more threatening than any words. As Chen secured him, the man finally spoke, his English perfect but accented. "You've made a mistake, deputy. A very expensive mistake." When Hawkins arrived at the scene with backup, he recognized the gravity of the situation immediately. This wasn't some random mule run gone wrong. The quantity, the quality, the route, everything suggested a major operation. The kind that would demand retaliation when disrupted. 6 million street value minimum, Hawkins murmured, examining the packages. This was meant for Phoenix, maybe LA. Ghost, who had responded as backup, was already photographing the vehicles and suspects. "Sheriff, check the passengers' hands. Those aren't farmers' calluses." Hawkins looked closer. The man's hands showed the distinctive wear patterns of someone who spent extensive time on the range. Military or law enforcement, definitely trained. "Run him through every database we have," he ordered. Back at the station, the interrogation revealed little. The driver was expendable, a low-level courier who knew only his immediate contacts. But the passenger, identified as Carlos Mendoza, maintained his silence with professional discipline. His fingerprints came back clean, too clean, suggesting either false identity or careful operational security. "I want to speak to your superior," Mendoza finally said, after 6 hours of questioning. "The actual authority here." Hawkins entered the interrogation room, reading the man's body language like a tactical map. Mendoza straightened slightly, recognition of another predator. "I'm Sheriff Hawkins. You wanted to speak with me?" Mendoza smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Sheriff, you seem like an intelligent man. Surely you understand that actions have consequences. This seizure, it disrupts certain arrangements. People will be unhappy. Are you threatening me, Mr. Mendoza? Merely observing cause and effect. The desert is dangerous. Accidents happen. Sometimes entire families disappear. It would be unfortunate if Cibola became less peaceful." Hawkins leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more menace than any shout. "I've hunted men through mountains where the air is too thin to breathe. I've tracked enemies across deserts that make Death Valley look like a garden. Your employers don't scare me, and neither do you." Something flickered in Mendoza's eyes, perhaps respect, perhaps calculation. "We shall see, Sheriff. We shall see." The drugs were logged into evidence, the suspects processed into the system. But Hawkins knew the real battle was just beginning. He called an emergency meeting of his core team that night, gathering in the secure conference room. "This changes our timeline," he announced, spreading surveillance photos across the table. The cartels don't let $6 million vanish without response. Thunder studied the images of the seized drugs. Explosives would be my play. Hit the evidence room, destroy the product, send a message. Too subtle. Ghost countered. Cartels like spectacle. They'll want bodies, probably public executions. Fear is their primary weapon. Valkyrie had been running zoos through the seized vehicle, imprinting the scent signatures. The dog's telling me these drugs pass through at least 3 transfer points. This is part of a major pipeline. Which means, Hawkins concluded, we've just declared war on their cash flow. They can't let this stand. Over the following days, the signs accumulated like storm clouds. Unfamiliar vehicles began appearing in Cibola, SUVs with blacked-out windows, older sedans that circled the sheriff's office repeatedly. Ghost, positioned in various overwatch positions, logged each instance. 3 vehicles yesterday for today, he reported. They're mapping our response patterns, timing our shifts. The local informant network, cultivated by Hawkins over years of patient relationship building, brought more warnings. Maria Escobar, who ran the town's only motel, reported strange guests paying cash, refusing maid service. Tommy Red Horse, whose gas station sat on the town's southern approach, noticed the same vehicles filling up multiple times without going anywhere. Then came the intercepted communications. The NSA might have forgotten about the listening post Hawkins had helped establish during a joint operation years ago, but he hadn't. The equipment, carefully maintained by Thunder, picked up encrypted chatter on cartel frequencies. They're using rolling codes, Thunder reported. But I'm catching fragments. Multiple references to El Escorpión and something called Operación Egregion, Operation Sting. Hawkins felt the familiar pre-combat tension building. In Afghanistan, this period was called the patience phase, when you knew the enemy was coming but not exactly when or how. It was during these times that lesser units made mistakes, jumping at shadows or relaxing too soon. Increase our readiness level, he ordered. I want everyone carrying extra magazines, trauma kits in every vehicle. Ghost, preposition yourself at alternating overwatch points. Don't establish a pattern they can predict. The team implemented security upgrades with practiced efficiency. Hidden cameras sprouted like desert flowers, covering every approach to the sheriff's office. Motion sensors linked to silent alarms created invisible perimeters. Emergency weapons caches appeared in strategic locations, behind the false wall in the janitor's closet, beneath the floorboards in the break room, inside the air conditioning ducts. Hawkins personally briefed the 3 day shift deputies who weren't part of the SWAT team, Rodriguez, Chen, and Mitchell. All were solid cops, but none had the specialized training of the core team. If something goes down, your job is to survive and protect civilians, he told them. Hit your panic buttons, take cover, and let us handle the tactical response. Deputy Rodriguez, a 10-year veteran who never served in the military, voiced what the others were thinking. Sheriff, is this really necessary? We're talking about drug dealers, not an army. Los Aztecas aren't street corner dealers, Hawkins replied. They're sicarios trained at camps in the Sierra Madre. They use military tactics, military weapons. If they come, they'll come hard. The preparation intensified. Valkyrie ran zoos through building clearance drills after hours, the dog's keen senses memorizing every corner of the station. Thunder checked and rechecked the building's structural points, identifying load-bearing walls and potential breach points. Ghost created range cards for every possible shooting position within 1,000 yards of the office. On Tuesday morning, the informant network delivered its most specific warning yet. Miguel Ortiz, the gun range owner, had overheard conversations at the Desert Rose Cafe. Strangers speaking Spanish had been asking about the sheriff's routines, staffing levels, response times. They're not being subtle about it, Ortiz reported. Almost like they want us to know they're watching. Psychological warfare, Hawkins recognized. They want us nervous, jumping at shadows. Make mistakes. But his team wasn't composed of men and women who rattled easily. They'd faced worse odds in darker places. If anything, the building tension seemed to sharpen their edge, like a blade being honed before battle. Wednesday brought a new development. A convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled through town, moving slowly past the sheriff's office. Ghost, positioned in the church bell tower with his rifle, tracked them through his scope. Lead vehicle has armor plating, he reported over the encrypted radio. Professional installation, probably rated for rifle rounds. Middle vehicles riding low, either carrying heavy cargo or personnel. Trail vehicles running security, 2 shooters visible. The convoy didn't stop, just cruised past like sharks circling prey. But the message was clear: we're here, we're watching, we're coming. That night, Hawkins couldn't sleep. He walked the perimeter of his ranch, checking sight lines and defensive positions out of habit. The desert was quiet, but it was the quiet that preceded violence, the held breath before the plunge. His satellite phone buzzed, a text from an old Delta Force buddy now working DA intelligence. Heads up. Escorpión spotted in Nogales yesterday. Traveling north with Force package. Stay frosty. Hawkins smiled grimly. Juan Escorpión. Morales. Former Mexican Special Forces, trained at Fort Bragg alongside American units. Turned cartel enforcer after his wife and daughter were killed by a rival gang. Now Los Aztecas' most feared Sicario commander, known for military precision and complete ruthlessness. Thursday morning dawned clear and hot, the temperature already climbing past 90 by 0700. Hawkins arrived at the station to find his team already in position, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Something feels different today, Valkyrie mentioned, checking her gear for the 3rd time. Zeus paced restlessly, whining at the front door. Thunder nodded agreement. Barometric pressures dropping. Storm coming, literal or metaphorical. Ghost had been on the roof since 0400, his sniper's intuition keeping him at his post past normal rotation. Movement at the south checkpoint, he reported. Multiple vehicles staging at the old gas station. Hawkins checked the duty roster. Rodriguez, Chen, and Mitchell were scheduled for the morning shift. He briefly considered calling in the SWAT team early but decided against it. Too obvious, might spook the attackers into postponing. Better to appear unaware, let them commit. At 0847, the first sign came. A delivery truck, later discovered stolen from a Phoenix company, approached the station. The driver seemed nervous, fumbling with paperwork at the front desk where Mitchell sat processing reports. Ghost's voice crackled over the radio. "Sheriff, I've got movement." Multiple vehicles approaching from 3 directions. "This is it." Hawkins keyed his mic. "All units, code red." "I say again, code red." The delivery driver suddenly reached into his jacket. Mitchell, reacting on instinct, dove sideways as the man produced a MAC-10 submachine gun. The front windows exploded in a hurricane of glass as the Sicario opened fire. Simultaneously, 2 SUVs crashed through the parking barriers, disgorging armed men in tactical gear. A 3rd vehicle positioned itself to block the rear exit. The 4th stopped at the front entrance, and out stepped a figure Hawkins recognized from intelligence photos, Escorpión himself. "El Sheriff!" the cartel commander called out, his voice carrying over the gunfire. "You should not have interfered with our business. Now you will learn the price of disrespect." Rodriguez and Chen had taken cover behind desks, returning fire with their service weapons. Mitchell was down, clutching his shoulder where a round had caught him above his vest. The dispatcher, Emma Lawson, had managed to trigger the silent alarm before diving beneath her console. 10 Sicarios methodically entered the building, moving with trained precision. They weren't street thugs. These were professionals, using proper room-clearing techniques and overlapping fields of fire. Hawkins, trapped in his office by the sudden assault, assessed the tactical situation. 3 deputies pinned down, minimal cover, facing superior numbers with automatic weapons. In any normal small-town scenario, this would be a massacre. But Cibola was far from normal. Even as the sicarios advanced through the building, even as El Escorpión barked orders in Spanish, even as the situation seemed hopeless, the encrypted emergency frequency crackled to life. Ghost in position. I have angles on external security. Valkyrie moving to secondary breach point. Zeus's weapons free. Thunder en route. Demo charges ready. ETA 60 seconds. Hawkins smiled coldly as he chambered a round in his M4. The cartels thought they were attacking a small-town sheriff's office. They were about to discover they'd stumbled into a hornet's nest of America's most lethal warriors. As gunfire erupted throughout the building and the sicarios celebrated their apparent victory, none of them noticed the IR strobes activating on the roof, the subtle movement in the adjacent buildings, or the barely perceptible vibration of approaching vehicles. The trap was sprung. The hunters had become the hunted. And El Escorpión, for all his training and experience, had made the one mistake that would cost him everything. He had threatened the peace of warriors who had come home, and awakened the demons they had tried so hard to leave behind. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed through the corridors of the Cibola County Sheriff's Office like thunder in a canyon. Deputy Chin pressed himself against an overturned desk, his Glock 17 seeming woefully inadequate against the storm of bullets shredding the air above his head. Beside him, Rodriguez was trying to apply pressure to Mitchell's shoulder wound while returning fire when possible. "Where the hell is backup?" Rodriguez shouted over the cacophony, ejecting another empty magazine. Chen didn't waste breath answering. Their radio frequencies were being jammed, a professional touch that confirmed these weren't ordinary cartel thugs. He'd seen this before in Afghanistan when insurgents used stolen military gear. These sicarios had come prepared for war. In the sheriff's office, Hawkins had already switched to battlefield mode. The familiar calm that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours settled over him like armor. He keyed his encrypted tactical radio, a frequency the cartels couldn't jam because they didn't know it existed. "All elements, this is Hawk. Situation report. Ghost on Overwatch. I count 14 hostiles inside, for securing perimeter. Lead vehicle has El Escorpión +2. I have clear shots on external security, but civvies are starting to gather. Requesting weapons free. Negative, Ghost. Hold fire until civilians clear. We protect innocent life above all. Valkyrie approaching south entrance. Zeus has sent on multiple targets. Standing by for breach. Thunder in position. Demo charges ready. I can create multiple entry points on your command." Hawkins analyzed the tactical board forming in his mind. The sicarios had made their first mistake. They'd committed all their forces to a frontal assault, leaving their flanks exposed. Classic military doctrine: maintain a reserve. These cartel soldiers had forgotten that lesson. Outside, El Escorpión stood behind his armored SUV, directing his forces with hand signals. The former Mexican Special Forces officer carried himself with military bearing, his tactical vest festooned with spare magazines and grenades. A gold-plated AK-47, a gift from the cartel bosses, hung from a single-point sling across his chest. "Search every room," he barked in Spanish. "Find the evidence. And bring me the sheriff, alive if possible, but I won't be picky." The sicarios advanced methodically through the building. They'd studied the floor plans, knew the layout, had even run rehearsals at a mock-up facility in Mexico. What they hadn't known, couldn't have known, was that Hawkins had made subtle modifications to the building's interior. False walls, hidden passages, concealed firing positions. Deputy Chin watched through a cleverly placed mirror as 4 sicarios approached their position. He held up fingers to Rodriguez. 4 tangos, 30 feet, closing fast. Rodriguez nodded, checking his remaining ammunition. 6 rounds. Mitchell was barely conscious, his breathing labored. The lead sicario rounded the corner, AK-47 sweeping for targets. Chin waited until all 4 were committed to the hallway before triggering the concealed switch. A section of wall panel dropped away, revealing Thunder's pre-positioned claymore mine. The explosion turned the hallway into a killing zone. When the smoke cleared, all 4 sicarios were down. But the blast had also given away their position. "Contact! Officers down in the main corridor!" Escorpion's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Converge on that location!" Hawkins knew his deputies needed immediate support. He grabbed the tactical pack from behind his desk. Body armor with ceramic plates, extra magazines, flashbangs. As he geared up, his mind flashed to another building, another firefight. Fallujah, 2004. Second battle. Room-to-room fighting against insurgents who knew every corner, every hiding place. But that was different. There, he'd had a full platoon of Marines. Here, he had 3 deputies and a SWAT team scattered across the town. Time to even the odds. "Thunder, I need a diversion. South wall, maximum noise." "Roger that. Heads down in 5, 4, 3. The explosion shook the entire building. Thunder had used just enough C4 to blow a hole in the exterior wall without bringing down the structure. Dust and debris filled the air as sicarios scrambled to respond to this new threat. In the confusion, Hawkins moved. Not through the hallways where the enemy expected him, but through the crawl space above the drop ceiling. Years ago, he'd reinforced these panels specifically for this purpose. Now he moved with silent efficiency, following a route he'd practiced blindfolded. Ghost's voice came through his earpiece. "Hawk, 3 more vehicles approaching from the east. Looks like reinforcements." "Damn," Hawkins muttered. The cartels had learned from their previous encounters with American law enforcement. They were treating this like a military operation, waves of assault, strategic reserves, coordinated movements. Below him, he could hear Escorpión shouting orders. "Team 3, check the armory. Team 4, secure the evidence room. And someone find that sheriff!" Hawkins reached a predetermined position above the main lobby. Through a small hole he drilled months ago, he could see Chin, Rodriguez, and Mitchell pinned down. 6 sicarios were advancing on their position, using textbook fire and movement tactics. Time to remind them that American warriors wrote those textbooks. Hawkins dropped through the ceiling tiles behind the advancing sicarios. His first burst caught 2 of them before they even registered his presence. The others spun around, but Hawkins was already moving, using angles and cover like a lethal geometry lesson. "Sheriff!" Chin shouted, providing covering fire as Hawkins eliminated another sicario with precise shots to center mass. "Get Mitchell to the secure room," Hawkins ordered, engaging the remaining attackers. "Rodriguez with me." The secure room, a reinforced panic room disguised as a supply closet, had been another of Hawkins' additions to the building. Chin half-carried Mitchell towards safety while Rodriguez fell in beside his sheriff, their movements synchronized through dozens of training exercises. Outside, Valkyrie had reached her entry point. Zeus stood rigid beside her, every muscle tense with controlled aggression. She'd removed his muzzle. When she gave the command, the dog would become a 90-pound guided missile with fangs. "Valkyrie in position," she reported. "Ready to breach." "Hold," Hawkins replied. "Let them think they're winning first. It was a calculated risk. Let the enemy believe they had control, make them overconfident, then shatter that illusion with overwhelming force. The same strategy that had worked in the mountains of Afghanistan. Inside the evidence room, 3 sicarios were frantically searching for the seized cocaine. They didn't notice the small device Thunder had hidden above the door, a flash bang on a remote trigger. Escorpión entered the room, his patience wearing thin. Where is it? 200 kilos doesn't just disappear. One of his men held up an evidence log. According to this, it should be here, Chief. Then find it. Tear this place apart if you have to. What they didn't know was that Hawkins had moved the drugs to a secure DA facility 2 days ago, anticipating exactly this scenario. The evidence room contained only decoys, packages of flour wrapped to look like cocaine bricks. Thunder's voice came through the tactical net. Hawk, I've got movement on the roof. Looks like they're trying to set up a sniper position. Ghost, you copy? Already tracking. Winds 5 knots from the southwest. I have the shot. Take it when ready. The suppressed rifle spoke once. On the roof, a sicario with a scoped rifle collapsed silently. His spotter, not understanding what had happened, leaned over to check on his partner. Ghost's second shot removed any need for medical attention. Inside, the firefight had reached a critical phase. Hawkins and Rodriguez had linked up with 2 other deputies who'd been caught in the communications room. Together, they held a defensive position at the intersection of 2 hallways, but ammunition was running low. Last mag, Rodriguez reported, slamming it home. Hawkins assessed their situation. 4 defenders, limited ammo, at least 8 hostiles still active inside the building. Time to change the tactical equation. All elements, execute Phase 2. Phase 2 was something they'd rehearsed dozens of times, a coordinated counterattack designed to overwhelm and disorient an enemy force. It began with thunder. The explosion wasn't meant to kill, it was meant to terrify. Thunder had rigged charges in the ventilation system, creating a series of rapid detonations that sounded like incoming artillery. Sicarios who'd been advancing confidently suddenly dove for cover, their combat discipline shaken. Valkyrie breached the south entrance, Zeus leading the charge. The dog took down the first sicario before the man could even raise his weapon. Valkyrie followed, her M4 carbine spitting precisely aimed shots. Her ranger training showed in every movement, smooth, efficient, lethal. Ghost shifted position, moving to a secondary hide he'd prepared days ago. From his new vantage point, he could cover both the front entrance and the parking lot. His rifle began its deadly work, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision. Escorpión realized his assault was falling apart. These weren't small-town cops. These were warriors, operators, professionals who'd seen more combat than most of his sicarios combined. He grabbed his radio, shouting for his reinforcements to attack. The 3 additional vehicles roared into the parking lot, disgorging another dozen sicarios. But Hawkins had anticipated this too. Thunder touched off the charges he'd hidden beneath the asphalt, turning the parking lot into a moonscape of craters and twisted metal. 2 vehicles were disabled immediately. Push them back, Hawkins ordered, leading his small group forward. The tide of battle was turning. The hunters were becoming the hunted. In the evidence room, Escorpión realized the drugs were gone. His rage boiled over. Find that sheriff! I want his head! But Hawkins found him first. The 2 men faced each other across the destroyed evidence room. Both had been trained by the same American military that produced the world's finest warriors. Both had seen combat, had killed, had led men in battle. But their paths had diverged, one choosing justice, the other choosing gold. Juan Morales, Hawkins said, using Escorpión's real name. I know your story. Fort Bragg, class of '07. Your family. I'm sorry for what happened to them. Escorpión's face twisted. You know nothing about loss, gringo. I know it doesn't justify what you've become. Drop your weapon. It's over. Over? Escorpión laughed bitterly. This is just beginning. Kill me, and 10 more will take my place. The cartel never forgets, never forgives. Neither do we. The two men moved simultaneously. Escorpion's AK-47 came up, but Hawkins was faster. 3 shots, center mass. The cartel commander staggered but didn't fall, body armor. Hawkins adjusted, put 2 rounds through the man's thigh, dropping him to the ground. Outside, the remaining sicarios were being systematically eliminated. Ghost precision fire kept them pinned while Valkyrie and Zeus cleared room by room. Thunder moved through the building like an avenging angel, his shotgun speaking with authority at close quarters. A wounded sicario tried to take a hostage, Emma, the dispatcher. Before he could grab her, Rodriguez put a round through his shoulder. The man spun, raising his weapon, but Chin finished him with a headshot that would have made Ghost proud. In 15 minutes, it was over. 14 sicarios dead, 6 wounded and captured. Escorpión survived his wounds but would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. The Cibola County Sheriff's Office looked like a war zone, but every deputy was alive. As the smoke cleared and sirens approached, Hawkins surveyed the damage. Bullet holes pocked every wall. Windows were shattered. The front entrance was demolished. But the American flag still flew above it all, untouched by the violence below. "Ghost, give me a sitrep," Hawkins called. "Perimeter secure. No escapees. Civilians are safe, already uploading videos to social media. Valkyrie? All clear inside. Zeus is asking for his tennis ball. I think he's earned it. Thunder? Just admiring my handiwork. Those parking lot charges worked perfectly." Hawkins allowed himself a moment of pride. His team had performed flawlessly, protecting their community against overwhelming odds. But he knew this victory came at a price. The cartels would remember this day, would seek revenge. Walking outside, he found his deputies tending to the wounded, both friend and foe. That was the American way, fierce in battle, merciful in victory. The arriving state police and FBI agents stopped in shock at the scene before them. "What the hell happened here?" the FBI special agent in charge demanded. Hawkins looked at the destruction, then at his team, warriors all, defenders of the innocent, guardians of peace. "Justice happened," he said simply. "American style." The confrontation was over, but Hawkins knew the war had just begun. The cartels had awakened something in this small desert town, a sleeping giant with sharp teeth and a long memory. They'd discovered that some battles were worth fighting, some places worth defending, some people worth protecting. As the desert sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the message was clear: Cibola was no longer just another town on the trafficking routes. It was a fortress, defended by America's finest. And God help anyone who tried to breach its walls again. The dust had barely settled when Hawkins gave the signal. "Execute, execute, execute!" The words triggered a response so precisely choreographed it could have been a ballet, if ballets involved tactical gear and automatic weapons. This was the moment his team had trained for, the revelation of their true capabilities to the stunned sicarios who thought they were dealing with small-town cops. Thunder's breaching charges detonated simultaneously across 3 entry points. The reinforced door didn't just open, it disintegrated, sending fragments into the reception area where 4 sicarios had taken cover. Before the smoke cleared, 9 flash bangs erupted throughout the building, their synchronized detonations calculated to overwhelm the human nervous system. Above it all, Ghost's rifle spoke with mechanical precision. The external guards never saw their death coming. One moment they were scanning for approaching law enforcement, the next they were down, each felled by a single shot that entered just below the rim of their tactical helmets. A gap in armor that only a trained sniper would know to exploit. Valkyrie burst through the south entrance with Zeus at her side. The Belgian Malinois launched himself at the nearest sicario with the focused aggression of a guided missile. 90 pounds of trained muscle and sharp teeth took the man down before he could bring his AK-47 to bear. Valkyrie followed, her movements a fluid combination of ranger school training and countless combat operations. "Contact left!" she called out, engaging two sicarios who emerged from the records room. Her rifle barked twice, controlled pairs, center mass. Both men dropped. She didn't slow down, didn't check if they were dead. In close quarters battle, momentum was life. The sicarios were beginning to understand their mistake. These weren't cops, they were warriors, operators who had hunted terrorists through mountain caves and urban hellscapes. The tactical superiority the cartel had assumed evaporated like morning mist. In the main hallway, Hawkins advanced with mechanical precision. His M4 carbine seemed an extension of his body, moving from target to target with economical grace. A sicario appeared from a doorway, 3 rounds stitched across his chest before he could fully aim. Another tried to flank. Hawkins dropped to one knee and put 2 rounds through the man's pelvis, following up with a headshot as he fell. "Moving to secure the evidence room," Hawkins called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. Years of combat had taught him that panic was more deadly than bullets. Escorpión, realizing his carefully planned operation was disintegrating, fell back to the sheriff's office with his personal security detail. His mind raced. How had simple cops turned into special forces operators? The intelligence had been clear: small-town law enforcement, limited tactical capability, standard police weaponry. "Chief, we need to retreat," one of his lieutenants urged, blood streaming from a graze wound. "No!" Escorpión snarled. "We finished this. Call in the reserve team." But Ghost had already anticipated this move. From his elevated position, he observed the 3 SUVs approaching from the east, the cartel's tactical reserve. He adjusted his scope, calculating wind speed, distance, bullet drop. The mathematics of death. The first shot punched through the lead vehicle's windshield, taking the driver in the throat. The SUV veered sharply, crashing into a light pole. The second shot found the front passenger of the second vehicle. The third eliminated the driver of the trailing SUV. "Hostile reinforcements neutralized," Ghost reported with the emotional detachment of a surgeon. Inside the building, the battle had become a close-quarters nightmare for the sicarios. Every room seemed to have been modified, turned into a tactical puzzle box. Hidden doors allowed the defenders to appear from unexpected angles. False walls concealed firing positions. Even the ventilation system had been weaponized, allowing thunder to drop flashbangs into rooms before entry. Valkyrie and Zeus had reached the communication center, where 3 sicarios had barricaded themselves. She considered her options, then made a hand signal to Zeus. The dog's entire demeanor changed, from aggressive to almost playful. He barked once, sharp and loud. The sicarios, thinking the dog was about to charge, focused their attention on the doorway. They never saw Valkyrie slip through the adjacent room and emerge behind them. 3 quick shots, 3 bodies on the floor. "Communications center secure," she reported. Thunder had infiltrated through the hole he'd blown in the south wall, his shotgun loaded with specialized breaching rounds. He moved through the building's lower level, systematically clearing rooms. His PR. Aesthetic ear actually gave him an advantage. The electronic processor could filter out the concussive noise of explosions while amplifying subtle sounds like footsteps or weapons being readied. He encountered 2 sicarios trying to set up an ambush in the motor pool. His first shot took out the overhead lights, plunging the area into darkness. His second and third shots, guided by the muzzle flashes of their panicked return fire, ended the engagement. "Motor pool clear. These boys really should have brought night vision," Thunder commented. Hawkins had reached the evidence room, where he found 3 sicarios frantically searching for the seized drugs. They spun at his entrance, weapons rising. Time seemed to slow, as it always did in these moments. Hawkins saw everything, the fear in their eyes, the trembling of their hands, the poor trigger discipline. His rifle spoke 3 times. 3 bodies hit the floor. Evidence room secure. Someone tell these idiots the drugs aren't even here, Hawkins said. Throughout the building, the tide had turned decisively. The Sicarios' numerical advantage meant nothing against the SWAT team's superior training and preparation. Room by room, floor by floor, the sheriff's office was being taken back. Escorpión and his remaining men had fortified themselves in the sheriff's personal office. They'd overturned the heavy oak desk for cover and taken up defensive positions. The cartel leader's famous golden AK-47 gleamed in the fluorescent light. "They're coming for us, Chief," one of his men said, voice shaking. "Let them come," Escorpión replied. "I've faced American Special Forces before. They bleed like anyone else." Hawkins approached the office door, reading the tactical situation through years of experience. Fortified position, limited entry points, desperate men with automatic weapons. This required finesse. "Juan Morales," Hawkins called out, using Escorpión's real name. "You were at Fort Bragg, class of '07. I was there in '05. We probably ate in the same mess hall." Silence from the office. "I know what happened to your family," Hawkins continued. "The Zetas. Your wife, your daughter. I'm sorry, brother. No man should endure that. You know nothing." Escorpión's voice cracked with emotion. "I know loss. I know rage. But this path you've chosen, it dishonors their memory." Inside the office, Escorpión's men looked at their leader. They'd never heard about his family, never knew he trained with the Americans. The golden AK-47 suddenly seemed less like a symbol of power and more like a monument to grief. "You think you understand?" Escorpión shouted. "The government did nothing. The police did nothing. Only the cartel offered justice. What justice? How many innocent families have you destroyed? How many children have lost parents to your violence?" The words hit home. Escorpión's hand trembled on his weapon. Thunder's voice came through Hawkins' earpiece. "I've got a shot through the window. Say the word." "Negative. Let me talk him down." Outside, Ghost continued his overwatch. 3 more cartel vehicles had arrived but kept their distance, the occupants having witnessed their comrades' fate. Through his scope, Ghost could see them arguing, pointing at the sheriff's office, clearly reluctant to engage. "Targets holding position. They're not eager to join the party," Ghost reported. Valkyrie had moved to the records room, where she found 2 wounded Sicarios. Her medical training kicked in, even enemies deserve treatment. As she applied pressure to one man's chest wound, he looked up at her in confusion. "Why?" he asked in accented English. "Because I'm a soldier, not a murderer," she replied. Back at the sheriff's office door, the negotiation continued. "Juan, you have 2 choices," Hawkins said. "Continue this path and die badly, or surrender and live to find redemption. Your family wouldn't want this." "Don't speak of my family. I'll speak of mine then. I lost brothers in Iraq. Good men. Better than me. I wanted to kill everyone responsible. But hate is poison, brother. It eats you from inside." Silence stretched. Then, finally, "What guarantee do I have?" "My word as a fellow warrior. Surrender with honor, face justice with dignity." More silence. Hawkins could almost hear the gears turning in Escorpión's mind. "Chief," one of his men pleaded, "maybe we should, quiet." Escorpión snapped. Then, louder, "You promise medical treatment for my wounded?" "Already being provided." "Check your radio." Escorpión did. Reports were coming in, wounded Sicarios receiving first aid, being stabilized for transport. This wasn't how cartel wars usually ended. You fight with honor, Escorpión admitted. We protect with honor. There's a difference. Inside the office, Escorpión looked at his golden AK-47. The weapon that had been his identity, his power, his revenge. Slowly, he placed it on the ground. We're coming out, he called. Don't shoot. Weapons first, Hawkins instructed. Slide them out, then exit with hands visible. One by one, the weapons appeared in the doorway. Then Escorpión emerged, hands raised, followed by his 3 surviving men. Hawkins kept his rifle trained but lowered as they complied with instructions to kneel. As Thunder moved in to secure the prisoners, Escorpión looked up at Hawkins. Your men, they fight like special forces. That's because they are special forces. Or were. Escorpión laughed bitterly. We never had a chance. You had every chance. You chose the wrong target. The sheriff's office was secured. Outside, local police and federal agents were arriving in force. The remaining cartel vehicles retreated, their occupants unwilling to face the same fate as their comrades. Ghost descended from his perch, rifle slung. His final tally, 8 confirmed kills, 0 misses. Surgical precision that had saved countless lives by preventing reinforcements from joining the battle. Valkyrie emerged with Zeus, both spattered with blood but uninjured. The dog carried his tennis ball proudly, his reward for a job well done. Thunder surveyed the damage with a professional eye. Going to need some renovation work. I know a guy. Hawkins looked at his team, warriors all, protectors of the innocent. They'd revealed their true nature today, shown the world that some sheep had very sharp teeth indeed. The aftermath would bring investigations, media attention, probably commendations. But for now, there was work to do. Wounded to tend, prisoners to process, a community to reassure. As the sun climbed higher over Cibola, the message was clear: this town was protected by America's finest. The cartels had learned a costly lesson about assumptions and underestimation. Later, reviewing the tactical footage, federal agents would study the engagement like a textbook operation. The precision, the coordination, the controlled violence, it was a masterclass in small unit tactics. But for Hawkins and his team, it was simply another day of service. They'd sworn oaths, to protect and serve, to defend the Constitution, to stand against all enemies. Today, they'd honored those oaths with blood and bullets. The revelation was complete. The wolves now knew there were sheepdogs in Cibola, and these sheepdogs had very sharp fangs. The aftermath of battle carried its own rhythm, a familiar cadence to the warriors of Cibola. As federal agents swarmed the scene and news helicopters circled overhead, Hawkins' team moved with practiced efficiency, securing evidence and providing statements. But beneath the professional exterior, each felt the profound shift that had occurred. Their quiet sanctuary had been transformed into a fortress, their hidden strength revealed to the world. 3 days after the assault, Cibola had become the center of national attention. CNN ran hourly updates about the small-town SWAT team that defeated a cartel army. Fox News dubbed them America's hidden heroes. The footage, captured by surveillance cameras and bystander phones, went viral, showing the precise, methodical destruction of the cartel force. In the sheriff's office, now resembling a construction site more than a law enforcement facility, Hawkins met with FBI Special Agent Rachel Martinez, who had been assigned to investigate the incident. 14 confirmed kills, 6 captures, 0 civilian casualties, Martinez read from her tablet. It's textbook. Almost too perfect. We train hard, Hawkins replied simply. Your team's performance exceeded Metropolitan SWAT standards. Their backgrounds explain it, but... She paused, studying him. Why here? Why Cibola? Hawkins looked out the shattered window at his town, where residents were already organizing repair efforts. Warriors need peace too, Agent Martinez. We came here to find it. To protect it. The transformation rippled through the community like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The hardware store, owned by former Marine sniper Jake Patterson, became an informal gathering point for veterans. They arrived throughout the day, some offering help with repairs, others simply needing to be among those who understood. Never thought I'd see action like that stateside, Patterson said, handing out coffee to the assembled vets. Brought back memories. Good ones or bad ones? Asked Sarah Chin, who had served as an intelligence analyst in Afghanistan. Both, Patterson admitted. But mostly, it felt right. Protecting our own. At the Desert Rose Cafe, conversations that once centered on cattle prices and weather now included tactical analysis and community defense. Maria Escobar, the owner, had already started a fund for deputies' families and building repairs. Those boys saved our town, she declared, refusing payment from any law enforcement officer. This is the least we can do. The transformation was most evident in the sheriff's department itself. Deputies who had never served in the military now sought training from their veteran colleagues. Rodriguez, who had initially questioned the need for such extensive preparation, approached Ghost at the makeshift shooting range. Teach me, Rodriguez said simply. Everything you know. Ghost studied the younger deputy, seeing the determination in his eyes. It's not just about shooting. It's about mindset. Are you ready for that? After what I saw, yes. I need to be ready. For them. Rodriguez gestured toward the town. The Veterans Network, once informal and invisible, began to organize openly. Hawkins established the Cibola Protective Services, a volunteer auxiliary force that would support law enforcement during emergencies. Within a week, 47 veterans had signed up, bringing expertise ranging from combat medicine to cybersecurity. At the first official meeting, held in the high school gymnasium, Hawkins addressed the assembled veterans. We came here for peace, he began, his voice carrying to every corner. But peace isn't passive. It requires vigilance, preparation, and sometimes, violence. You've all proven you can switch from citizen to warrior when needed. Now we make that ability official. Thunder coordinated equipment acquisition and training schedules. Valkyrie developed K-9 programs, training more dogs for tactical operations. Ghost established an advanced marksmanship course, sharing techniques that had served him from Kosovo to Kandahar. The transformation extended to the town's youth. JROTC enrollment tripled, with Ghost volunteering as an instructor. His sniper course became legendary, not for teaching killing, but for instilling discipline, patience, and precision in everything from academics to athletics. Excellence is a habit, he told his students. Whether you're solving equations or setting up a shooting position, the principles are the same. Local businesses adapted to the new reality. The gun range expanded, adding tactical bays and simulation equipment. A military surplus store opened, catering to the growing interest in preparedness. Even the library started a section on tactical studies and military history. But the most profound transformation was psychological. Cibola no longer saw itself as just another border town. It had become a symbol of American resilience, a place where evil had been met with righteous force and defeated. The town motto, unofficially adopted by popular acclaim, became Semper Paratus, always ready. The cartels, for their part, had undergone their own transformation. Intelligence reports indicated Los Aztecas was fragmenting, with El Escorpion's capture creating a power vacuum. Other cartels, having witnessed the devastating response in Cibola, adjusted their routes to avoid the area entirely. DA Agent Tom Williams, visiting to debrief Hawkins, shared the latest intelligence. Trafficking through your county has dropped 94%. They're calling Cibola La Zona Muerta, the dead zone. No cartel wants to test your defenses. Good, Hawkins replied. But we won't relax. They might return. After what happened? I doubt it. You've created something unique here, a hard target that's not worth the cost. The national attention brought opportunities and challenges. Media requests poured in daily. Hollywood producers called about movie rights. Publishers wanted book deals. Hawkins declined them all, but others in the community embraced the attention. Miguel Ortiz's gun range became a pilgrimage site for tactical enthusiasts. He expanded his operation, offering courses taught by the now famous SWAT team members. Might as well share what we know, Ortiz reasoned. Make more communities like ours. The transformation reached its symbolic peak 6 months after the battle, when the president visited Cibola to present the presidential unit's citation to the sheriff's department. The ceremony, held in the town square, drew thousands from across Arizona. What happened here, the president declared, represents the best of America. Citizens who served their country in war, continuing that service in peace. When evil came to their door, they stood firm. They protected their neighbors. They showed the world that American courage knows no bounds. Hawkins, accepting the citation on behalf of his team, kept his remarks brief. We're not heroes. We're Americans who remember our oaths. To protect and serve. To defend against all enemies. To preserve peace, even if that requires war. The applause lasted 10 minutes. As normal life resumed in Cibola, the changes became permanent fixtures. The sheriff's office, rebuilt with federal grants and community donations, now included state-of-the-art tactical facilities. The basement armory was expanded and officially sanctioned. Regular joint training exercises with federal agencies became routine. Children played in parks under the watchful eyes of veterans who had faced down cartels. Businesses flourished, protected by a security umbrella that deterred all criminal elements. The annual Veterans Day Parade became a showcase of tactical capabilities, with demonstrations that drew visitors from across the country. In quiet moments, Hawkins reflected on the transformation. They had come to Cibola seeking escape from war, only to find that sometimes war followed you home. But in facing it, in defeating it decisively, they had created something unprecedented, a community where warriors could find peace because they guaranteed it themselves. The town had been transformed from a potential victim into a predator that criminals feared to approach. And in that transformation, Hawkins and his team had found what they'd been seeking all along, a home worth defending, a peace worth fighting for, a place where the skills that had saved lives overseas could protect lives at home. Cibola stood as proof that strength and peace were not opposites but partners, that warriors could build as well as destroy, that sometimes the best way to preserve tranquility was to demonstrate the terrible price of disturbing it. The transformation was complete. Cibola had become what its protectors had always known it could be, a shining city on a hill, guarded by angels with dirty faces and steady trigger fingers. 1 year after the battle that changed everything, Cibola stood transformed. Crime statistics told the story in stark numbers: 0 cartel incursions, violent crime down 97%, drug trafficking eliminated entirely. The FBI used Cibola as a case study in community defense, while Homeland Security cited it as a model for border town security. Sheriff Hawkins stood on his office balcony, surveying the town that had become a fortress disguised as paradise. The rebuilt sheriff's office featured subtle but significant upgrades: reinforced walls, ballistic glass, concealed firing positions. Tourists never noticed the defensive architecture, seeing only the charming adobe style that matched the desert aesthetic. "Sir, the new recruits are ready for their assessment," Deputy Rodriguez announced. The young officer now commanded the training division, his initial skepticism about military-grade preparation replaced by zealous dedication to tactical excellence. 8 new deputies, all military veterans, had joined the force. They came from across America, drawn by Cibola's reputation as a place where warriors could serve and protect without apology. where their skills were valued rather than feared. The cartel's defeat was undeniable. Los Aztecas had fragmented completely, its leadership imprisoned or in hiding. Other criminal organizations actively avoided the region, their intel networks spreading warnings about La Fortaleza del Desierto, the desert fortress. Though some questioned the extent of the SWAT team's actions, most celebrated the powerful message sent: America does not bow to intimidation. Hawkins, humble yet firm, quietly stepped back from the limelight, continuing duties without fanfare, steadfast in moral clarity. Their story stands as a statement to an enduring American truth, that genuine strength lies not in aggression but in preparedness, resolve, and the unwavering commitment to justice and liberty for all. What do you think about this incredible stand? Do you believe strength alone guarantees justice, or does real power lie in partnership, strategy, and bravery? Share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life stories of courage in the face of overwhelming odds.